What does it feel like to be inside of a cave?
I That's a great question. I love the feeling inside of a cave because it's completely different. You're 100% isolated from the outside world. You know, sometimes we talk about like we'll go on an 8-day underground trip and it's like, wow, I mean, there could have been a nuclear war and we wouldn't know, nothing would be different where we're at right now. You know, is anything going to be different when we come out? So when you're underground, you're so isolated that you're never thinking, oh, did I pay the bill for the electric, or like, is my cell phone, but
Yeah.
like, what's everything, because you're so isolated and you're in such a different world where the smells are different, the colors are different, everything feels different. um, um, the only thing that matters is really what's in front of you. So when you're underground, like you're just paying attention to what's in front of you very much. You're so focused on the present. And I think that that's really cool. And I think that that's something that we kind of lack in society. And, I think people that are hikers and just wilderness explorers would probably empathize with some of those real similar feelings.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But just having, being away from the sun and having that sensory deprivation is, it's really mild at first, but over time you start to notice it a little bit, and then when you come back out, you're just overwhelmed with, like, the grass is so green and it smells so good, and it's just, it's you realize how you can take that stuff for granted a little bit when you don't have it for several days.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, how long have you been in a cave before?
Yeah, yeah. So the longest I've spent underground is in a Falls Cave in the Grand Canyon in Arizona, and that was 8 days, 7 nights. And
Wow.
I've also done that same time in Lechuguilla Cave in New Mexico for 8 days, 7 nights.
Wow. Does it get to you eventually after 8 days, or?
That's a good question. I was concerned about that going, on my first cave camping trip, because you hear, like, oh man, am I gonna get the rapture of the deep, or, like, am I gonna start to, because some people do. I personally, for myself, I didn't feel any of that. I just, after 8 days underground, it's like I wanted to leave. Like Lechuguilla Cave is 99% humidity, 68
Wow.
degrees. So imagine, like, 8 days in that environment, sweating, like it's the grossest I've ever been my whole life. So I was ready to leave, but I was ready to leave, like, just on the same, like, I would be ready to leave after 8 days hiking in the mountains and being gross. You just kind of like, yeah, yeah, yeah. You just like, okay, this is awesome. I'm excited that I did this adventure and I'm ready to move on. Like that's kind of how I didn't feel any different than just like a wilderness trip you'd feel, where
Fair
it's
enough.
it's it's nice to leave, but it's nice to come back to.
So you never have to face the feeling of claustrophobia ever?
So when I first started caving, I was really claustrophobic.
Really?
And yeah, and the way, just going through, like the Denise's Crawl and Horse Thief Cave, there's
Yeah.
parts of that where I would have to wait, and I'd let the person ahead of me go all the way through, so that way I could go through the scary part as quick as I could. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
you
Fair
know,
enough.
yeah, like I remember doing that, and just what helped me with it is I was motivated. I wanted to see what was on the other side, and then just having people go ahead of me. So it's like, okay, Greg went through, I know I can go through. So just that kind of attitude and mentality, and over time it just became less of a thing. Now I still sometimes feel claustrophobia, and I know for a lot of my peers, it seems like as we get older, claustrophobia is maybe one of those things that starts creeping back in a little bit more.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I have some friends that are like, that are caving, that have been caving for a while, and are in their 40s now, and are like, I don't really want to do that squeeze that I know I can do, and I've done a bunch, because it's pretty uncomfortable and a little scary. And yeah, yeah. So it's kind of interesting how that perspective shifts.
You get yourself into some tough spots. Do you ever feel like you might not ever get back out?
Never more so than the bottom of Tears of the Turtle.
Yeah. So could you explain a little bit about Tears of the Turtle?
Yeah, yeah, certainly. So Tears of the Turtle is the deepest cave in the 48 right now. It's about, I don't have the exact number, but it's about 18 or 1900 feet deep. There's 50 some rope drops to get to the bottom of the cave, but just to get to the entrance is a 60-mile drive down a dirt road, and then a 24-mile hike through the wilderness. So it's a pretty arduous trek just to get to the cave, and then you get to the bottom. There's 50 some rope drops. There's a lot of squeezes. The cave averages, it's a mile, almost a mile and a half long. It averages 2 feet wide, so it's 2 feet wide, 30 feet tall, and sometimes that 2 foot wide part is 15 feet up, 20 feet up. So you're like in this narrow crack, and you have to stem in this muddy crack, and you're like trying not to slide down into the bottom of this keyhole wedge. You're covered in the slickest mud you've ever experienced, and that's what most of the cave is like. There are parts where it's bigger, parts where it's smaller, but that's just like a good average of the cave. So it's mentally trying, fatiguing. It's one of the toughest things I've ever done, and people that are way tougher than me say it's one of the toughest things that they've ever done too.
Wow. I was on the understanding that it's still potentially going on, right? You can only make it so far.
Yeah, so we in 2016 we set up a camp in there because we were reaching the limits of human endurance doing day trips to the bottom of the cave and back with some of the toughest cavers in America. And that I'm aware of, at least. So those guys, we set up camp in 2016 to make it easier for us, and we continued to find more passage at the bottom. In 2019, the same thing happened. They set up a camp, continued to map and explore more passage on the bottom. The cave is still going on with airflow and water at the bottom that we don't know where it's going or what it's trending, or it's possible that so the cave is approaching the level of the White River. It's at the bottom. It's, I think, maybe 100 feet or so away. So it could mean two things, basically. It's going to either hit water table around there and sump out, or what could happen, and this is speleogasming, but it could, that river could be a perched water table, and there could be cave passage underneath that river. And sometimes in these types of situations, that river is actually like an indentation that's related or formed or somehow related to like passage underneath, like trunk passage underneath. No idea what the case is going to be. It's one of the craziest things is that the Silvertip cave system, which is the longest cave system entirely in Montana, is 7 miles away, and it's on the same spine of mountains. So you just go 7 miles straight south along the spine of mountains, and there's the Silvertip cave system, and it very much resembles the Tears of the Turtle cave, where there's a lot of different infeeders. There's Tears of the Turtle, and there's another cave system called Virgil the Turtle, and another one called Tickle Me Turtle, and another one called there's a bunch of different turtle cave systems that all end by getting too tight with airflow at the bottom. If that was Silvertip, those passage would just go to one main big trunk passage. So it's possible, since this is the same geology, same area, that these are all leading into one big trunk passage. And if that's the case, it's probably going to be the hardest cave in the world. Is honestly what it could lead to being. There was a caver who visited Tears of the Turtle in 2019, who's also visited the deepest cave in the world, which is Voronezh Cave in Russia. It might have been recently surpassed by another one, but she was at Tears of the Turtle. She was one of the people that camped at the bottom of the cave, and she said if Tears of the Turtle goes a few hundred feet deeper, it'll be the hardest cave in the world. Yeah, so it's just every time we go into that cave, we're like, can we find the bottom? Will it stop? We don't want it to keep going, but there, we also have this inane desire to know what's on the other side. So
yeah, absolutely. What is it like to be in a spot that potentially no one has ever been to before? You are a true explorer.
It's what drives a lot of cavers. That feeling and that opportunity is what drives is what drives a lot of us. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it right now. I mean, I am really lucky. I've been on trips in some amazing caves where I've been the first one there, and what that means, Austin, is for the rest of eternity. My footprints are the footprints that other people have to follow. Like those like
Yeah,
it's just
absolutely. That's true.
it's an amazing, like what my light is showing light on has never seen light before. It's this crazy experience, and once in a great while, we get lucky and we find some really weird stuff.
Thank you for listening to the Mountains and Mushrooms podcast. The full episode can be found on all the major podcast sites like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Castbox, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and Anchor. Ad-free listening and bonus content can be found at patreon.com/mountainsandmushrooms.